snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So today I am here to chat to you guys about an anthology, and the anthology that I'm going to be reviewing is Unfettered. This is a collection of different stories all collected together by Shawn Speakman, and it was basically a book that was put together in order to help him pay off his medical bills, because after getting cancer for the second time he could not get insurance and therefore he was massively in debt and had a lot of big medical bills to pay, and he just wasn't going to be able to do it without some sort of income. And so luckily he was friends with Terry Brooks, who is a big name in the fantasy world, as we all know, and he basically donated him a story and said, look, you can take my story and you can sell it and you can get the money from selling the story to use against your medical bills. And luckily Shawn Speakman is a good friend with many other authors as well, and so when he asked around if anyone else would like to donate a short story for this anthology to help him get medical bills paid, then a lot of authors did agree that they would like to contribute, and so there are some big names in this book. There are stories from Patrick Rothfuss, Shawn Speakman, Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan, Michael J. Sullivan, Naomi Novik, Peter V. Brett, Mark Lawrence, Terry Brooks, and many others as well. So there are a lot of big names in this, and when I found it on Amazon for 99p, I think it has gone up again the price now, but when I found it was only 99p and I could not resist all of the huge names that were inside this anthology. And after reading about the fact that the proceeds went towards his medical bills, of course I felt like there was definitely no question I had to get this anthology, support him and have all of these awesome stories. So yeah, I'm going to talk about 13
I don't have 13 fingers.
of the stories which are included in here, because although there are 24 stories, I actually rated 13 of them 4 stars and higher, so I'm only going to talk about those ones. However, if you are interested in reading what I thought about all of the novellas in the anthology, then I will link my Goodreads page and my Goodreads review down below so that you guys can go and check it out, because I have written a mini review for every novella within the anthology, but if I tried to describe all of them now it would take me a very long time, so I'm only going to go through my 13 favourites. The first story within the anthology is Imaginary Friends, which is by Terry Brooks. I had never read any Terry Brooks prior to reading this, but I had heard a lot of good things and I know that a lot of people really like his writing, so I was definitely interested to pick this up, and I was not disappointed. This is a story about a young boy who basically has an imaginary friend, and he goes on adventures with this imaginary friend, and his family, they dismiss his imaginary friend as just this imaginary person who he runs around and plays with, but in actuality it was a tale sort of all about the mind of imagination and how imagining things and your subconscious can really kind of help you with everyday life. And this imaginary adventure that he goes on turns out to be quite real for him, and it kind of affects a lot of stuff that happens in his life thereafter, and it was a really whimsical and just funny and entertaining read, and I really enjoyed it, so I ended up giving that one a 5-star rating, and I just really enjoyed it, so I will be picking up more of Terry Brooks stuff in the future for sure. The next story that was in the anthology was How Old Holly Came to Be, which is by Patrick Rothfuss. This is a kind of a poem. It was kind of in a Norse poetic style, and it definitely was interesting. It was really not what I was expecting at all. I didn't realise that this was going to be a poem. I thought it was a short story. I didn't really know at all what it was about, but it was really interesting, and I would definitely say that a lot of people don't like this story and thought it was really weird. I did like it, but only on my second go through reading it. You definitely have to get the tempo right in your head and make sure that you are kind of understanding what's going on. So I would definitely recommend rereading that one a few times, because that was the only way that I've sort of discovered exactly what was happening and really actually came to enjoy it. And I thought that it was a really interesting prose that he was using. A lot of people have said that it was a style over content sort of situation. I feel like the content perhaps wasn't that great, but I really enjoyed the style and I felt like it was a really interesting way of putting a story into an anthology, so I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 star rating, and I thought it was really interesting. I definitely wouldn't say it was good, because I can't say that I fully understood it or fully loved it, but I really thought it was just really cool, and I it was very different, and for that I just had to give it a good rating because it was something that I hadn't seen before and I enjoyed it. The next story was called The Old Scale Game by Ted Williams. This is a story about a dragon slayer who basically is very, very old. He's kind of past his prime and he wants to retire, but people keep on asking him to go and slay more dragons, and more problems keep arising, and so one day he gets a bit fed up with having to slay these dragons, and he doesn't want to sort of risk his life all the time now that he's quite old. So he has a chat with the dragon and says basically, look, I don't want to slay you, you're an old dragon, I'm an old man, shall we work together and pull off some cons to make the villagers think that I have slain you, and we can actually get a lot of money and we can get a lot of food and so on from me pretending to slay you in different villages. And it's basically a big con, and it was just so funny, so entertaining. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely want to pick up more by this author now because it was so fun. It was really entertaining and it just made me laugh and I enjoyed it a lot, so another 4-star rating. Next, I really enjoyed Mud Boy by Peter V. Brett. I was hoping that I was going to really enjoy this because I love Peter V. Brett. I think he's an amazing author. I was hoping that it was going to be really cool because it is set in the Demon Cycle world, and I thought that it was going to be good, but I didn't know for sure, and I read it and it was all about Briar, who is a character from the Demon Cycle world, and I'm just so excited because I know that he said he would like to do a longer story about Briar, but this was kind of a short one, and I just really enjoyed it. I felt like it was so good being back in the world. I do think that he writes short stories excellently. I really liked Rayanne's Gold and The Great Bazaar, really enjoyed them as well, which I read last year I think, and on the whole I just think that his writing is wonderful and I really loved it, so 5 out of 5 stars for this one. It was really good. Next was The Sound of Absolutes by Peter Aurelian. I'm not sure how you say that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting story actually, and the premise of the whole thing was really interesting. I'd never heard of this author at all, and I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know anything about his work, and it was a lot longer than most of the other short stories in the anthology, so I was a bit nervous going into it, hoping I was going to like it because obviously it's a very long one, so if I didn't like it then I would have to read it for a long time. However, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really interesting. It's basically set in this world where music basically can affect the body, and if you can play certain chords or if you can learn a certain piece of incredibly hard music and incredibly hard suffering it's called, then you can basically play someone to death and you can bring out emotions within them and you can rip their body apart and things like that. And there's a big full-scale war going on at the time in this world, so obviously it's a key thing to learn. However, it does have a drawback to it in that if you play the song Suffering, then you have to put your heart and soul into it, and you can be very worn out and you can be very stressed. It takes a big toll on whoever plays it, and I just really loved the kind of idea of this world, and I would love to see a longer version of it because I think it was really interesting. The main character was really cool. He was a little bit whiny at first, but he got better as it went on, and I just really liked it, and I wasn't expecting to because as I say, I'd never heard of this author, but I really enjoyed it, so 4.5 stars. Really good story. Next, I read Keeper of Memory by Todd Lockwood. Todd Lockwood is actually the guy who also illustrates the book. There are pictures throughout which preface each story, and he illustrated them, so I was really interested to read what he'd written and see if he was as good at illustrating and writing, I'm not sure, and it was about dragons. I love dragons. I think dragons are amazing. I love them as a mythical creature. I'm sure most people love them as mythical creatures. I'm not sure I'd want to meet one, but yeah, I just loved dragons, so reading a story about dragons is always a good thing, as long as it's done well, and I definitely felt like this was done well. I really liked the fluid writing in this story, and I felt like it was a really interesting story, and I liked it, so yeah, 4 out of 5 stars for this one, and I don't think he really writes much stuff other than maybe other short stories, so it was interesting to see an illustrator try his hand at writing, because it was just, yeah, cool. Although I would say that it would be better with more sort of description about the actual dragons, because you kind of just hear their voice and you don't get a massive description about what's going on with them and what they look like and so on. So if I wanted to be more immersed, that would have been a little bit more necessary, but for a short story it was fine, so 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read All the Girls Love Michael Stein, which is by David Anthony Durham, whom I own some other books by, and I really want to read them, but I haven't got around to them yet. I own the Arcasia trilogy, book 1 and 2, so I need to get on them, because after reading this story I have decided I really like his writing. I think he is a really, really good storyteller, and I really enjoyed this story. Apparently it was a story that he actually wrote for his daughter when her cat died, and it's about a ghost cat who basically goes on a mission to try and help his owner who he left when he died, because he sees how much she is suffering and he wants to help her by going to speak to the great cat. And it's just really whimsical, really enchanting, and I just loved it. It was really, really cute. Very quick read, and I adored it, so definitely one of the better ones in the anthology, and I really wasn't expecting it. I didn't know what it was going to be like at all, but I really enjoyed it, so 4.5 stars again, and I really recommend that story. Next, I read Strange Rain by Jennifer Bosworth. This is a story about Iris and Ivan, who are some side characters from one of her longer series, I believe, and she basically said that she really enjoyed the sidekick role and she wanted to experiment with that and sort of give a backstory to her sidekicks from previous novels, and I really liked that idea. I thought that was really cool, and these two in particular were very peculiar, very odd family. They were born as conjoined twins, but they were separated at birth to become their own person, and Iris has always felt a little bit more connected to Ivan than Ivan has to Iris, and it's basically a story about how they drift apart as they get older, and Iris doesn't accept it, and she can't accept it that he wants to have his own life and doesn't want to just be her twin, and so she kind of exacts revenge on him for deserting her, and it's quite interesting, and it was a really kind of weird story, but I really enjoyed it. It appealed to me in a strange way, so 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Unbound, which is by Eldon Thompson, and this is a story about Kalak. Kalak is a character from one of his longer novels, I believe, and it was basically his backstory, and it was him growing up as a young child and how he has to fight with his father and he doesn't have a good upbringing, and how he basically is trained to become a killer. There's a hard choice at the end and there's a harsh reality at the end, but it was a really lovely story, and I felt like it was definitely a hard-hitting but really enjoyable story. It started off really fun and light-hearted, like they were play fighting together, and then as the story goes on and more unfolds, you do see that there is actually turmoil going on behind the scenes politically and with him and his father, and there's a lot of stuff that kind of is hinted at but isn't gone into detail, so I suppose in the larger series maybe it is. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I thought it was one of the better written for sure, and I could imagine it vividly, and I felt like it was really, really interesting, and I definitely want to pick up this larger series that it's from, so I need to do some research and find out what that is. 4.5 stars, really, really good. Next, I read The Jester, which is by Michael J. Sullivan. I have just purchased Theft of Swords, which is book 1 and 2, I believe, in the Rieria Revelations by him, and this was kind of a spin-off little story which is about the characters in that series, and I had never read it, but you don't need to have read that series to read this short story, and it made me want to pick it up instantly. I loved the characters. I instantly fell in love with Hadrian and Royce. I thought they were really, really fun, and the way that they worked everything out and the way that they kind of got through this maze or puzzle that they were in was just so enchanting and really, really cool, and I definitely will be picking that book up very soon because I'm excited about it now. And yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, really, really good. Then I read The Duel, which is by Lev Grossman. I have not read the Magician series by him yet, but I really, really want to. I've heard lots of good things about it, and this is another spin-off of a character from that series. It's a really great story about a duel that takes place between the king and the opposing team, their champion, and it was just really, really fun. I loved the magic ideas, and I loved the fact that it was just very, very blunt. Everything they said was very blunt and to the point, and it was just sharp, snappy snappy retort story with a lot of funny moments throughout it. So I enjoyed it a lot, and I think that the series will be really entertaining when I do eventually pick it up. So yeah, really excited about that now, and I've definitely bumped that up my to-buy list. So I will hopefully buy that soon. And I gave it a 5 out of 5 star rating. The Unfettered Night, which is by Shawn Speakman. This is a spin-off story about some characters again from his main series, and this was a tale about the Hellower, who is basically a person who can pass between Anwar and the real world, which are the two worlds. Anwar is basically where the Fae live and all the magical creatures, and obviously the real world is our world, but it's kind of set in the past. It's very much a Catholic society that we live in, and there are a lot of rules that the Fae cannot be discovered by the people, because otherwise all of the church's teachings will go to pot, and yeah, people won't believe the church anymore if they start seeing fairies everywhere. So basically it's his job to make sure that there is no crossover between the two worlds that affects them and kind of ruins the balance of society, and he has to fight a vampire. So it was really interesting. It was definitely slightly cheesy, which is why I couldn't give it a 5 star rating, because vampires I definitely think are hard to do right and hard to make scary because of all the sort of Twilight fan fiction sort of vampires that go on nowadays. That is a common image, and so to make a vampire scary I feel like it has to have a lot more depth than this story did, which was a little bit of a shame because it could have been really good. However, I did still enjoy the story a lot, and I definitely was interested in the world, so I will be picking up more of his work for sure. And I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 star rating. Finally, another one by Shawn Speakman, and this was the Twilight Dragon. This one had a dragon in it, so obviously I was going to enjoy it.
No, I did judge them, not just if they have dragons in it, I promise.
But yeah, there was a dragon in this, and it was a really, really cool story because at first I wasn't sure where it was going, but as it got deeper into the story I kind of realised what was going to happen, and I didn't see the sort of twist that happens, so I really enjoyed that when that came along, and it was just really, really cool. It was about the church going to speak to a dragon and ask where the elves were, but then something happens and things go wrong for the church. So I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 star rating. On the whole, I thought this anthology was one of the better ones I've read for sure. I really enjoyed an awful lot of them. I did give a lot of others in the anthology 3 or 3.5 stars, so because I haven't mentioned them doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. I only didn't enjoy about 2 of them, I think, so that's really good from an anthology of different authors who all write different genres. But yeah, if you want to check out what I thought about all of the different stories, including the ones that I have not mentioned in this video, then please do click down below and go on the link and you can read my short reviews of them. So yeah, if you are interested in that, then that is there. Please let me know what you thought. If you have read anything by any of these authors, or if you have read this anthology, then what you thought of it. I would love to know because I haven't heard very many people talking about it. I hope that you guys end up picking this up. If you would like to support Shawn Speakman, or if you would just be interested in the stories, then please do pick it up because I think it's a really, really good one and I would recommend it. If you like fantasy, a lot of them are fantasy based, so yeah, really, really cool. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all in my next video. Bye! And you gonna have a little chat about the